Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP John Poz, for the two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good on the March to 200, episode 199. We've been so fortunate to have several guests, of course, the last few weeks, including Brett Lauderdale. We're the talk of the wrestling world from the last episode. One of the
Yes.
things that we had a nice opportunity to talk with about Brett was Triller Plus, and we asked him about how he feels about things, and he said he's very optimistic, if I remember correctly. But there's a lot of talk about Triller and AGBA and the merger, and I wanted to dive into that tonight.
Yeah, so obviously this is a major topic. Triller, AGBA, what's going on? There's $500 million out there. Why don't you kick this bad boy off with some Triller talk?
So first, I want to lean on a wonderful article that was written by Edward Baranek, CFA, titled "AGBA Group 500 million SEPA with Yorkville limits upside potential of Triller merger." The summary of the article: Triller's merger with AGBA Group Holding Limited has faced delays, causing the stock price to drop to around $2. The 500 million standby equity purchase agreement (SEPA) with Yorkville is a major concern for potential investors post-merger. Retail investors may face losses due to the size and nature of the SEPA, impacting Triller's upside potential. Inventory should consider selling into investors, should consider selling into any spike leading into the merger and revisiting its repurchase of shares at a lower price once the SPA shares have been distributed into the float. So let's look at the full article. 4 months ago, this is Edward, I wrote about the speculative upside potential of Triller's merger with AGBA due to it being a potential TikTok competitor or replacement. My note, that's um, Triller often hypes up things by talking about its connection to similarity to TikTok and what if TikTok gets banned in the US and so on. It was first hoped that the deal would close in May, but it is still outstanding as we head into the final week of August. Investors and swing traders have lost patience and the stock is eroded to just over $2. Just again, a note for myself, I did buy the stock recently. It's down about 13%, but since it's bounces around so much, I thought I'd have a little bit of fun with it. The stock has lost its momentum partially because the timeline for closing the transaction has not been met. But in my opinion, the bigger issue limiting the upside immediately after the merger takes place is a 500 million standby equity purchase agreement with Yorkville. So that's interesting. We're waiting for this merger, and if everything goes through, maybe we're like, okay, it'll all be okay. But there's an issue after the merger. Yorkville is well known for engaging in death spiral financing and other highly dilutive raises for its clients, usually on the backs of retail investors' losses. There remains a distinct possibility that there'll be a spike in AGBA's price as the merger completes, but I suggest that investors should take advantage of any profitable exit leading into or immediately after its completion. The merger will happen, but so will the dilution. The last update on the timing of the merger's estimated completion, this was at the time of the writing, we'll have a further update, came from HEBA's CEO, Fai Ning, on the X feed on July 29th. He gave deadlines of mid-August with certainty that the merger would close by the end of August. Given that we are a week away, there's a strong possibility that will be another missed deadline. This is causing some people to doubt that the merger will ever take place. I disagree. According to Edward, it needs to take place because AGBA and Triller's survival depends on it. I made the following statement to my previous article. AGBA had a $43 million loss on $54 million in revenue in 2023. At the end of the year, it had $18 million in cash and negative working capital of $12 million. Triller's balance sheet as of September 30th, 2023, showed $6 million in current assets against $378 million in total debt and other liabilities. Right, so we could talk about um, are people getting paid by Triller Plus? Are there delays? Are there good feelings? Are we optimistic or not? But sometimes there's the reality. So the reality at that time was that there was $6 million in assets against $378 million in total debt. So the vast majority of its 359 million assets are intangibles, which does make sense given the potential of its platform to be a TikTok rival. However, adding Triller's net loss and substantial negative working capital to AGBA's net loss and negative working capital will only mean one thing: significant financing will need to take place in order for this newly combined company to remain solvent. Triller sold a 20% stake in itself for a public listing, likely because it's desperate to tap the public markets for capital. The risk of dilution is going to loom over the company. I estimate a minimum of 200 million in cash should be raised, plus conversion of up to 200 million of its debt into equity. It's just a matter of the valuation at which the dilution will take place. Since then, AGBA has its Q2 2024 financials, which showed further deterioration of the balance sheet due to its net loss for the quarter. The working capital deficit has now eroded to 35.5 million for AGBA. Both AGBA and Triller are in desperate need of a cash injection. So the easiest way to do that is through using the public equity market we'll have access to once it merges. Conversely, AGBA is much more likely to be able to raise the cash it needs as Triller than as a relative unknown standalone fintech company residing in Hong Kong. This will get the deal done. A few days after my article, AGBA entered into a 500 million SEPA, which has since been amended to include a 25 million advance. Following up on my statement in the previous article, I expect the merged companies to use at least 200 million in short order. The remaining 300 million will likely be a cushion for further product development and strengthening of the balance sheet. Also, if there's going to be a monetization or recruitment strategy for influencers, the company will need to spend a substantial amount on upfront marketing costs. The terms of the financing. The common shares purchased to advance will be delivered by the company, will be purchased at a price equal to 95% of the lowest value VWAP. Okay, so this is getting a little bit financially complicated. I encourage people to read that aspect of the articles, but I think it paints the picture so well. But just going towards the conclusion, downgrading to hold leading into the merger, sell immediately after it. And the author pretty much has made that point. So giving, according to the author, in terms of looking at the information, a pretty dim outlook in terms of the prospects for Triller even after the merger. Getting back specifically into the pro wrestling realm, I was just thinking, what if the Triller Plus element, really the fight arm, which has seemingly been shielded in many ways, although financially that would catch up eventually if the company is so short on cash on hand, what would you do? So this was my thoughts on that, and people could read the article on LionCubJobSearch.com. With the merger between AGBA and Triller to face potential complications, there may be the reality of Triller having to sell its assets. In 2021, Triller acquired Fight TV. The total cost for a variety of acquisitions by Triller at the time was 250 million. That included a number of things, not just Fight. Fight was and still is, via its rebranded Triller TV and Triller TV Plus subscription service, the independent gorilla of all things violently streamed, from pro wrestling to MMA to boxing, but especially pro wrestling. Triller TV maintains a variety of distribution agreements with brands like AEW. We got into extensively with GCW last week and TNA. However, here and there are reports of delays in payment or non-payment with content providers, such as the promoter of VXS Wrestling. Again, Brett Lauderdale just talked about good relationships and an optimistic view. I also received a private DM from a smaller company saying that they haven't had an issue. The Fight acquisition never met the full potential of that Triller could seemingly provide, in my opinion. Fights featuring celebrity talents, what one might consider freak shows, or high-profile rap battles, were kept separate and were given a higher spotlight by the company. Could Triller just go away if problems persist? Or would there be the opportunity to sell off assets piece by piece, and who would buy it? So for me, I think Anthem Sports, which is potentially again owned by Northern Pacific Group or private equity backed, as listed by PitchBook, the parent company of TNA Wrestling, has demonstrated an appetite for acquisition and growth, with a focus on fighting leagues, media channels, and content distribution. TNA has maintained discipline in focusing its streaming efforts primarily on its TNA Plus service, even taking a step out of its premium YouTube subscription service recently. TNA's infrastructure is currently managed by a division of Endeavor, parent company of WWE and UFC's TKO. Triller TV would fit well under Anthem's portfolio. Anthem, which has flirted with distributing smaller leagues under TNA Plus under previous branding, would have access to and potential relationships with promotions across the spectrum of wrestling and fight leagues, with TNA Wrestling and Women's Fight League Invicta as its anchor, Access TV, the Fight Network, a variety of well-distributed fast streaming platforms, and legacy media can point towards Triller TV subscriptions. John, what do you think? If things fall apart and the Triller TV element can be broken out, do you think Anthem is the most likely bidder, or who else might get in the fray?
That's interesting because the anthem definitely should or could, but man, that's I don't know, a big piece of the wrestling pie out there. You know what I mean? For somebody to kind of scoop up. And I actually got a text saying that Triller TV owes a lot of promoters money, excuse me, DM, including themselves, and they truly feel companies are right now sugarcoating the issue. So very interesting. Kind of what you're hearing, what I'm hearing behind the scenes for what's going on. But it seems like GCW's not having any issues.
Yeah, and without revealing your extensive sources, John, was it anyone affiliated with the multitude of companies we mentioned thus far, or somebody
Yes.
separate?
Yes. Nope.
Okay,
Somebody we've mentioned so far. So
okay,
somebody's still, they're obviously paying a lot of attention to what's going on, and obviously they want to get paid.
sure. Um, and I was thinking about like who else could be there, like the Zone, which I always joke you've helped me to pronounce it.
Yes.
I was like Dawson. They've flirted with pro wrestling. Sometimes they're more in, and sometimes they're more out. Right? They had a deal with MLW, which was never really like capitalized well because the pandemic hit, and there was never like a major focus on that. And then they were, I think, distributing what, like AEW, in various parts of Europe, and then TNA. I might be mixing up the timelines, but they in terms of what they do, that would make sense if they want to be involved in not only pro wrestling, but one has to also think about like Triller, like what are you buying, right? Like how long are the deals that they have with the other like fight promotions, right? Because otherwise it's just a platform. Um, Cyber Agent, Cyber Fight, right? They tried to make a go of it with Wrestle Universe and haven't gotten that far, but it's a very big Japanese company that has somewhat worldwide ambitions in terms of its wrestling content distribution. Um, I can't see like TKO looking towards something like this right now. Um, I can't see Tony Khan being interested in something like this. So I don't know if there'd be other bidders from the pro wrestling side, maybe other streaming services like this. I wouldn't think like the highest profile ones like ESPN, but maybe others that deal with like boxing or other form of a fight sport. So, but sometimes like private equity could surprise us as well. There's these dark horses, and where money comes out of wherever, and they're ready to make bids.
Yeah. Very, very interested to see who kind of who could buy it or who would buy it if really there all these issues are still going around, or if this really is going to come to a head as far as them selling it off.
Yeah, and before we move on from the Triller HEBA news cycle, that they did announce on September 3rd an amended and restarted merger agreement. So Upon transaction closing, the newly combined companies will trade on the NASDAQ under the name Triller Group, which I like because I always mix up AGBA and ABGA. I have to keep Googling it to make sure I'm on the right track. So, plus for that. Transaction closing is anticipated to occur soon, so there's no specifics, subject to regulatory clearance approved by AGBA shareholders and other customers and conditions. Merger will create a cutting-edge, next-generation social media and entertainment platform for creators and users powered by AI and machine learning technology. So a lot of good buzzwords there. So people can Google that full article, but according to the top of the article, that was sort of the highlights from that. So I guess from our perspective, time will tell. What I would guess, and this is total speculation, that Triller is just looking at it. Who can we? Okay, we're short on cash. Who can we kick it down the road a little bit more, and who do we have to pay immediately? Who could really impact us? So some of the smaller companies, they can potentially get behind on what are they going to do about it. Whereas GCW, they could see the history with, IWTV issues and that sort of thing. And, as soon as problems occur, I think, or if problems would occur, that, they would go public about it in that way. So they'd have that leverage. With an AEW, if you would get behind in giving them their percentage of the pay-per-views or premium live events, whatever you would call it, they would put their lawyers on it right away. Anthem would be able to do that as well with their TNA pay-per-view revenue. So I think companies, when they start getting behind, and I think we saw this with ECW a number of years ago, it's sort of like, who do you need to pay to keep going, and who do you feel like you can get behind with? And that's just speculation.
As far as the rest of the news world goes, let's talk about Masked Republic. Huge show from Masked Republic.
Yeah, congrats to Kevin and the Masked Republic team. So from Kevin's posting recently on Facebook or LinkedIn, this past Saturday, Masked Republic, in association with United Talent Agency, held its first MaskedMania arena experience at Burt Ogden Arena in Edinburgh, Texas. And it was an incredible event. These few photos don't even do the entire event justice. I look forward to sharing a highlight reel from the event soon. The MaskedMania mission is both so simple yet innovative. Deliver a Mexico City arena lucha libre experience to both longtime fans and curious newbies in a manner which no other in the U.S. has ever done. Mission accomplished. With UTA now eyeing 2025 bookings for the experience, we can't wait for the year to come. So, really interesting experiment. It's funny, quite a while ago, I had messaged Kevin as we were just, exchanging ideas, what's going on in the Mexican scene. And I was like, a company like AAA or CMLL should really look at not just sending talent, but trying sort of a Cirque du Soleil type experience where you bring that authentic feel of lucha libre. And Kevin was like, can't get, basically paraphrasing, can't give you details now. Working on something like this. So definitely didn't get the idea from me, but we're along the same lines. And remember, Kevin had a podcast before us called The Business of the Business. So smart minds here. But interesting to see, now quietly, the event, and this just comes directly from Kevin. This drew over 2,000 people, or at least 2,000 people were in the building, or 2,100. And, how often do we see that in any form of wrestling in the U.S. market? We saw it in Staten Island, right, for a little person wrestling show. And we see it here, but we haven't seen it much, even among the outside of WWE and AEW, even among TNA, is just once or twice, and I'm not sure of any other promotions that have achieved that this year. So something to watch.
about GCW? I feel like GC Dub has even more news, even though we talked to Brett last week. Even more good news for GC Dub.
Yeah, so following last week's, I messaged Brett. I said, I'm sorry, I had mentioned the Hawaii Convention Center had listed 400 for GCW, but just went back there and they listed 600 um, potentially for the show or in terms of the setup. And we were joking about that a little bit, but from the impression Brett had given me or given us, it seemed like, it could be obviously set up for more. And that's maybe they come up with like a general estimate at first. But interestingly, and I love these like graphics that they do in terms of upcoming shows, and you could see like 5 or 6 shows every month. Quietly, they added a lot to December. So let's start there. So December 6th, back to Tampa at the Egypt Shrine Center. Then the following day, so from Tampa to Atlanta, December 7th, Center Stage. December 13th, Phoenix, the Nile Theater. December 14th, back to LA, UCC. December 22nd, Asbury Park, House of Independence. John, get your tickets early.
Yes.
Uh,
Yep.
and that's almost like, kind of feels like that holiday time also.
Yeah,
Um,
I got WWE's got to put out their holiday tickets for MSG to
yeah,
have already.
I think that would be right, like a little bit in advance of when it potentially might land in the garden, but could be a big week for you, John. And
Yep.
December 28th in Seattle, back to Washington Hall, as we talked with Brett about last week, and how, with partner promotions and good relationships that they have, they might use the same venues and even not co-promote together, but kind of check that they're all cool together. But just going to their schedule, the first 2 shows will likely have occurred by the time you hear this. Detroit and Rochester, both are looking very solid in terms of advanced ticket sales, especially Rochester, based on the venue size. There is just GA available, and that'll probably be another sellout. December 20th in Philly, or as we define, right, it's called something else, but it's really the Philly Market in Harris. September 21st, Hartford. Back to Atlantic City, October 12th and 13th at the Showboat. October 18th in Denver at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds. I just love wrestling shows that are at fairgrounds. It just sounds cool to me. October 19th in LA. So that's potentially the 11th sellout in a row. And then December, maybe the 12th. October 31st, so the Primal Compound in San Diego. I was going to Google the capacity, but then I got distracted. November 2nd, previously discussed Honolulu, Hawaii Convention Center. November 14th at Louisville, Headliners Music Hall. November 15th in St. Louis. I think that's Sauget, Illinois, which is hard to say. I appreciate when they just said it St. Louis, Pop's Nightclub. November 16th, Orlando Level 13 Event Center. November 23rd, East Rutherford at American Dream Mall. As family-friendly a show as it gets for GCW in, being appropriate for that venue. And the following day, November 24th, is the Bloodsport show in Jersey City in White Eagle Hall.
How about a little NWA? Maybe a little bit of a shocker with NWA selling out NWA 76 in Philadelphia.
Yeah, John. So this I'm going to categorize as like complete rumor, like maybe internet silliness. Did you see the like thing going around about somebody claiming that NWA people are like siphoning gas from people's cars during the shows?
No, I didn't see that.
No.
That sounds insane. Jeez Louise,
Yeah,
what
it
the
was
hell?
pretty crazy. And it was like it was taking on some some momentum on the internet. So uh, sorry to share that to a broader audience, but we say you know we think this will be debunked by by episode
Yeah.
200. I'm not sure where these things come from, but one of the things that I have been trying to sleuth, which has been fascinating to me, is the NWA 76th anniversary show, which I saw the pictures. Everyone is saying it was a sellout. It's just surprising, as we covered clearly last week, that, or the week before, but just following it because it kind of stayed the same. Like it was just 2 or 3 rows that were sold. So sometimes Philly picks up like that. Don't know if there was any more comps than out of the ordinary. NWA often comes up like in vet ticks that they give away tickets. And of course, as we're recording this on 9/11, and respect to our troops, and I think that's a great idea. But I haven't seen any evidence of further distribution of there. Um, because as I mentioned, 2.5 rows I had sold out in advance of that. Um, what else about the NWA? The NWA will hold its first New York City event under Billy Corgan's ownership on Friday, 9/27 in Glendale, Queens, at the Sacred Heart Catholic Academy. The school has hosted independent wrestling events before in the gym and is a very intimate building. As from PW Insider, the event will be a fundraiser for the school. The show is set for 300 tickets at the time, with about 60 remaining. And NWA is sending talents like Tom Latimer, Kenzie Page, Natalia Markova, Aaron Stevens, Brian Idol, and so on. And the following day, they're going to be, I believe, in Long Island. So like a New York double shot. Also announced they'll be a part of the Riot Fest, which I was getting a DM about that from somebody that knows the music scene well, and he sees that as a pretty big deal. So just in terms of the NWA upcoming, so the Riot Fest, which is happening basically now or very soon, from September 20th to 22nd in Chicago. The 2 New York shows, one in New York City, so Queens, New York, on September 27th, and then on the 28th in Huntington Station. Then on October 4th is a Crossfire show, so one of their affiliates, Power Tapings in Tampa, October 5th and 6th. The NWA Chicago, so Billy Corgan's sort of affiliate promotion, even though he owns the whole thing. NWA Chicago Super Smashing Halloween on October 18th. The Samhain show on October 26th. Hopefully they don't do anything there that puts them in a tenuous position with the CW app. And then the long available NWA Looks Like Kill in Dothan on December 14th.
What about New Japan Pro Wrestling?
So we had been looking at the DC show for a while. WrestleTix had done a basically a final count or just prior to that, at least the day of. So the setup was maxed out 2576 in DC. They distributed 1883 tickets. The last time they were there was 2158, which was down 13%. I wasn't really seeing anyone talking about this show on my feed, John. Were you hearing much about it in advance?
No, not at all. Almost nothing.
Yeah, I was actually like at the end of the day, I was like 1,800 tickets. I know the expectations have been lowered, down 13%. I was like, not bad, So it's just like that feeling how much things have changed. They are coming back to the Lowell Memorial Auditorium on November 8th. It's listed as the Boston area. It's not that close to Boston, but maybe broadly, it might be considered within that market. Our New Englanders, let us know, weigh in on that. Lowell is a really interesting venue. 2,800 seats. It was built in 1922, and I would have thought there'd been a lot more wrestling there, but according to trackers that I saw, WWF ran there in 86, 87 twice, and then 91. I think most famous for the Raw shows. John, was that the show where Shawn Michaels lost his smile?
I believe so. Yes.
Because it was like there's this. It looks like a theater box, right? Like that's when, like I remember Sean doing it. It felt like it was like in like that, like theater type style seating. So February 13th and December 22nd were the Raw shows that they held there. Then it wasn't until TNA One Night Only Hardcore Justice 3, 2014, and then Ring of Honor, and then teaming with New Japan, doing so independently as well. So 2016, 18 twice, 19 twice as well. And then the building was quiet. So kind of, I think a good choice for a venue again. Again, like running California, Washington, D.C., a show in the New England, potentially coming back to New York. It's like a decent circuit for them and a reasonable one, in terms of running like 5 or 6 shows a year that are these like tentpole events in the U.S. for them. In addition to um, Forbidden Door, that ran this year, but next year in London.
How about TNA Wrestling? What's going on with TNA?
So a little bit of a hodgepodge of different things. So just a fan had tweeted Killer Kelly that they ordered a show. Ordered a shirt quite a while ago, and they haven't gotten it yet. And then Killer Kelly was like tagging TNA merchandise. It's not the only person having issues with getting merchandise. It's been months for a lot of people. So that was interesting, a bold share. So I don't know who does the fulfillment for them, but it's a shame to have that, backlog that can hurt your business when it's hard enough to sell T-shirts. TNA hitting the ground with on the ground marketing of events. They've done things like this before, but they're going to be at a minor league stadium having Nick Nemeth, Moose, Laredo Kid on September 10th. Hyping up sales. So, however many people there, a couple thousand people, it's a smart move. Interestingly, as what we've talked about, their YouTube subscriber growth has been, their total is stunning. Their growth recently isn't as much, but they did reach 5 million subscribers, but they no longer have the premium subscription part on YouTube. TNA Plus subscribers get early access to live events on sales. Make sure you've opted into marketing updates. So that's interesting. Like TNA Plus, it's sort of becoming like even more so like a fan site, right? Like if I wanted to get Green Day tickets early or Dave Matthews Band or whatever, if you're paying to be a fan, you get like early access code and so on. So you can with TNA Plus, right? You can watch content, and now here you have this additional plus. This I found really interesting. Smash Wrestling. We see TNA talents sort of float everywhere, but they're having a Brace for Impact event on November 17th in London, Ontario. This made me think like Ontario. I started thinking about Scott D'Amore's motion. I'm wondering if TNA is a Canadian company, but they're more worldwide and they more feel like a challenger brand in the US. Smash Wrestling is a Canadian grassroots company. I'm wondering if like TNA is talent as well.
Interesting. As far as OVW is concerned, what's going on? What's the latest with OVW?
Yeah. So something again, we're talking about like the sleuthing of ticket sales. So WrestleTix had a final number for their Fight Night show in Pikeville, Kentucky, Appalachian Wireless Arena of 1609. And everyone was looking at this number when it had a full setup and so on. But I sort of, it might have. I don't question WrestleTix having the computer counting the tickets, but I just don't think that they moved that many tickets that quickly. And my speculation is not enough people were there that it's become a debate where somebody will say, "Oh no, I was at the venue and there was a couple of people, 100 people there, and I enjoyed the show."
I wonder how well they're doing with those bigger venues if they're not just smart enough maybe just to start booking smaller venues and just go that route instead of going the big, because that's a pretty big, 2000 for them. Like I know sometimes you could put some big names on there, but it feels like kind of a big leap.
Yeah, like the question was really like why they set it up for so much at the beginning, like start with that quarter house as we talked about. But if they did draw this number, then that's a good thing for them. They have the Dan O's seasoning like sponsorship that's been ongoing as they get more ambitious in the touring. But for OVW, it is a challenge, and like unless it's a sold show or fair show or smaller venue, it doesn't seem prudent to book some of these higher priced theaters or even arenas.
Just going back to TNA for a second, the pay-per-view buys, is that always something that's out there or not out there, just as far as like numbers for pay-per-view buys? Because sometimes I feel like it's not out there.
I feel like the TNA one eventually reaches, at least in terms of Meltzer, having a number or a speculated number of that. So for their Slammiversary pay per view, it had 8,000 TV buys, according to the Observer, um, a month after, so that's considered a final number. And speculation that would be 26,000 plus if you include streaming efforts. So that's I think that's impressive. That show obviously had a lot of attention. Just a little bit more about the TNA side. So I think we had mentioned this before, but it was in the trades now, so sort of like reconfirming it. Anthem tapped Brian Doherty as president of ad sales for Access TV and HD Net Movies. Doherty was the executive VP of multi-platform advertising sales for Nexstar and its national properties, including the CW. So we've seen a lot of movement in terms of Anthem executives, but one area that they continue to support is ad sales, and they put out the word again for their street team for people to help promote. Now, Damore has been doing some interviews, and he talked about TNA hiring Anthony Siccione, which we talked about extensively, to run their operations. As I was told, they wanted to have a seasoned television operator run the business, and their choice of Siccione. Anthony is a great guy, first and foremost, perfect guy to have a bite with or have a drink or coffee with. He's been in television for years. So if you want a TV executive, yeah, Anthony is an amazing television executive and a great person. So just looking at TNA's forthcoming shows. So Double Shot in San Antonio, September 13th, my birthday, and 14th. Spartanburg, as we've talked about, at the end of the month. At the end of October in Detroit, Bound for Glory. And I'll take a closer look at that ticket movement in an upcoming show soon. November 8th and 9th in Fayetteville. Turning Point in Winston-Salem on November 29th. And Center Stage in Atlanta, TNA Final Resolution, and a taping December 13th and 14th.
Now, as far as Damore and Maple Leaf, obviously maybe not working out as far as TNA was concerned, but what about his promotion, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling? What's the latest with them?
Yeah, a lot of resources in terms of forward facing talent, but also on the back end, really almost stunning, I would say, like in terms of the amount of talent that's being brought in. In a press release, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling announced that Timothy Walbert would direct the Maple Leaf Forge an Excellent event. Walbert previously spent 8 years with WWE and directed WrestleMania. He also worked for AEW as their head director from 2019 to 2023. Kevin M. Sullivan will lead the way with Maple Leaf's on-screen branding and production. Sullivan has worked for TNA, AEW, and WF throughout his career. Furthermore, executive producer Keith Mitchell was a key figure behind the scenes with WCW, is also part of the team. Mitchell previously worked for AEW and TNA as well. He retired upon his AEW departure in December 2021, but he is now back in wrestling. And then on the broadcast booth side, Don Callis is going to commentate the show with Mauro Ranallo. How much more Canadian can you get than that? And hard to keep track of all the talent announcements, but basically any, not any, but many notable free agents, especially if they're Canadian, that have availability to work the independent circuit seem to be booked for this show.
Seems like Maple Leaf Pro definitely has a good announce team. Seems like no doubt about that. Seems like Ronaldo and Callis are going to be the announce team kind of going forward. Pretty good.
Yeah, they're really making a run for Canada's number one wrestling promotion to air on Triller. So we'll see how that goes. I guess just at St. Clair College, a smaller venue, of course, where Demore has run forever and has done many TNA and Impact tapings and so on. But I guess sort of like what's the way of making money? The ceiling is kind of limited, in terms of a promotion of this type and scale on Triller. So let's see what they do next. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if there's some form of Canadian national television deal, announced. I don't know. We always just hear about TSN and so on. I don't know, their size and scope these days. But I wouldn't be surprised for sure to hear of some sort of formal media arrangement with a Canadian broadcaster cable outlet soon.
What about MLW? What's going on with MLW?
So just to look in terms of their forthcoming events. So again, the popular center stage, September 14th for Fightland, October 4th in St. Petersburg for Slaughterhouse, November 9th for Lucha Apocalypto. I feel like we've been talking about that one forever. And December 5th, back to New York for One Shot.
How about ROW? They've got stuff running very similar dates as MLW.
So Reality of Wrestling announces new TV time slot on Houston's premier wrestling channel, CW39, starting September 14th at 10 p.m. Central. So we've talked about Reality of Wrestling for a while, and even this deal with CW in which it's paired with Women of Wrestling, so it's that 2-hour block. It'll be interesting to see out of their own home market if they're able to secure something like that, because as we've talked about extensively, Women of Wrestling has 100% distribution. I don't think this is necessarily in full coordination with Women of Wrestling, more of an opportunity in the Houston market. But ROW, the locally produced weekly episodic show that has garnered hundreds of millions of views on YouTube and boasts a following of 790,000 subscribers on the streaming platform, is proud to announce its new airing time slot on CWKIAH. Booker T expressed excitement about the move, saying, "This new time slot is a momentous step. We've worked tirelessly to bring high-quality wrestling to our fans, and now, being featured on a historical wrestling channel in prime time, we can reach even more viewers. We are thrilled to continue growing and sharing our passion for wrestling with the Houston community." So, it's always good to see promotions sort of move up in the time slots and visibility as Reality of Wrestling is firmly planted in the Houston, Texas area.
How about some other news? I know there's some other big time shows going on out there.
So First Wrestling, getting a great spotlight from its venue and much more, Mall of America, in terms of a show that looked really packed out. Coastal Championship Wrestling announced 1100 for their most recent show. And Winnipeg Pro Wrestling will have Steph Delander, so a pretty big name, but in terms of the business side, that almost 1,000 tickets are gone. Get yours now. And an update a couple days later from WrestleTix showed that it was over 1,000. So this Winnipeg Pro, Rumble in the Burt branding, whatever that actually means, seems to do well year over year.
Seems like CCW down there in Florida does pretty good. Some pretty good drawing houses for them.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, like what they're up to exactly. Um, they also had the Championship Wrestling from Florida branding, um, but I haven't heard as much about that recently.
Yes, very true, very true. I guess that's going to wrap this bad boy up. We talked a lot about Triller. Feel like a lot more we'll be talking about them in the upcoming weeks. There's no doubt about it. But let's hit the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Two Man Power Trip. How about you, Lovey? What's going on?
Follow me on X, Lavie Marg, LAVIE, MARG, and especially this week with the lead topic, check out my long form articles on lioncubjobsearch.com. And we're almost there with 100 members of the LinkedIn Business of the Business Group. So help us get there. And one more ask for those listening on Apple, we need another review, hopefully a great one, to get us to 10. It's kind of been sitting at that 9 for a while. I'd love to see 10 for my birthday, right? I'm not going to do a fundraiser, but by September 13th, I guess people might hear this a little bit later, but within a week after my birthday, maybe want to see that 10th review on Amazon, on Apple, and 100 members of our Business of the Business Group.
Love it. Everybody, thank you out there for listening. See you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.